channel, everyone. This is another episode of the Kickstarter Weekly. This week's episode is going to look at games that are completing their funding between July 18th and the 24th. And I've been doing a lot of work still on my upstairs studio, which means, no exaggeration, I have punched over 100 games in the last week. Some of them have been expansions. A lot of that has to do with me trying to break down games that I have like a big box for, and maybe I don't have all of the expansions punched. In some cases, maybe I don't have anything punched. So I'm breaking down all these games, consolidating them, getting them into a big box when they have that, and getting rid of a lot of extra boxes and consolidating a lot of space, all of that to get the upstairs ready. So that has occupied a lot of my time in the last week, which means I haven't played any games. I will be playing the deluxe edition of Struggle of Empires this weekend with some friends, as well as the OG edition of Caelus. So not the new version, Caelus 1303, but the original version of Caelus. I also have some lighter games I'm trying to play with my, I was going to say fiance, but she's now my wife, Kristen, to see if we want to still keep them in our collection. So in next week's video, I definitely will be talking about Struggle of Empires and Caelus a little bit, and I may be talking about some other games as well, some lighter games. I also have a few games left to play until I can get my best of 2020 list done, and then once that's done, it will be less time to get to my best of 2021, and then I should be getting my best of 2022 up in the first few months, let's say the first 6 months of next year. And I'll be picking up the pace and getting those on more of a regular schedule as time goes on. But I'm playing catch up a little bit, and I did want to get a best of 2020 list out, so that's coming soon. As of next week, I'll probably have 2 games left. So what's really going to determine when that gets done is more the creation of that upstairs studio space. I'll probably wait to produce that video until I'm in that space with better equipment and lighting and stuff like that. And until then, I'll just keep producing these Kickstarter weekly videos. But once I get up there, you're gonna see my best of 2020, followed a few months later by my best of 2021, and you're going to see a lot of teach and review and gameplay type videos, and then eventually streaming on our new Twitch channel, which we're working towards as well. So all of that stuff is coming, but for the next few weeks, maybe month or 2 or 3, you're just going to get Kickstarter weekly videos, and then we'll be transitioning to doing a lot more stuff. Okay, so in this video, no played games, also no backed games. In last week's video, I covered Beyond Humanity Astro Miners, Globetrotting, and Joey Games. I did not back any of those games. I am backing several games from this week's video, so tune in next week and you'll be able to see which of the 4 games that I'm talking about with campaigns currently running that I personally backed. You'll find that out next week. But nothing for this week from last week, and no new games arrived, so nothing was acquired. Which means for this video, all I'm going to be talking about are the 4 campaigns that are currently running. That said, let's get to it and just keep moving forward with the video. On our list this week is Dice Throne Santa vs. Krampus. And this campaign had a minimum required funding goal of $30,000. It's currently at $673,000, which is about 22 times that minimum required funding goal. It's doing really well. It's going to complete its funding on Monday, July the 18th. Dice Throne plays 2 to 6 players. Games typically take 20 to 40 minutes. The complexity on the game is medium light, just barely into the medium light range. It's a very light game. It has just enough choices, though, I think, to edge it into medium light territory. And the risk associated with this campaign we're setting at low. It's being run by Roxley. They're a great publisher. They've run a lot of successful Kickstarters, many of them for Dice Throne. And Dice Throne, if you don't know the game, is essentially a dueling game. It can be played one-on-one. You can play it in groups of people, so it's kind of a free-for-all with everybody fighting everybody else. You could even designate teams. And there is another game. It's an expansion. It's called Dice Throne Adventures, but I almost consider it its own game. But you can bring in any characters that you have for Dice Throne and run them through, essentially, a dungeon. Dice Throne Adventures doesn't compete with games like Sleeping Gods that have a narrative element. There's not really a lot of story in Dice Throne Adventures, But it is procedurally generated, it's kind of randomly generated, and it has so much variability. It's one of my very favorite dungeon crawlers from the year that it came out, which I believe is 2021. But the way it works is you're going to import some characters that you have for Dice Throne. It can be anyone. And you'll be playing either dungeon crawl levels or boss levels, and they'll alternate. And when you're doing the dungeon crawl levels, you're going to have the tiles are random, the mini boss fights are random, the boss at the end of the level is random. What won't be random are the big bosses that you'll alternate. So you'll kind of do a dungeon crawl as your level 1, level 2 will be a boss. You'll go up to 8 levels. So 4 levels of dungeon crawl, 4 levels of bosses. The bosses are these really tough characters to fight. And an even cooler thing is that you can take those huge boss characters and then bring them back into Dice Throne. So because the character is so powerful, you can't just play them, as a normal character against, a bunch of characters with everybody doing, all for themselves. But you could have everybody fighting the person that's playing the boss character. There's so much variability in this game, from the individual Dice Throne sets to the battle chests that come with collections of 8 or 10 characters, to Dice Throne Adventures, which brings in this dungeon crawl element. Now, the reason that I'm mentioning Dice Throne Adventures, in addition to it being a favorite game of mine and a favorite dungeon crawler of mine, is that you can get it through this campaign as well, and there is an extra that can be used in Dice Throne Adventures, and that comes with every pledge level. So you're going to get that whether you want it or not, but if you like dungeon crawls at all, and if you like Dice Throne and you've often thought, I like fighting against other people, but what would it be like to play cooperatively with my friends, playing together, going through a dungeon together? Dice Throne Adventures answers that question and solves it magnificently and gives you a wonderful dungeon crawler to play with these characters. When you're just playing regular Dice Throne, what the game is essentially is, it's like Yahtzee with dice, but you also have cards too. So the dice and the cards you're going to use to trigger different kinds of abilities. It's got a lot of randomization in it, but there are also a lot of choices that you can make that can use the various dice rolls in many different ways. So you're not just necessarily getting a bad roll. There's ways to mitigate those rolls and mitigate them as the game goes on with the powers that you have in your tableau and with cards. It's a wonderful game. I don't really like games too much. I also don't like super direct conflict games, but for me, the exceptions to that, the big exceptions to that, are Dice Throne, more for dice rolling, and the Unmatched series, which is pure card play. Both of those games are so good, so well designed, that they break a lot of barriers, and they get a gamer like me who tends to prefer heavier games really just loving these experiences. So I would recommend Dice Throne to anyone, and Dice Throne Adventures as well, if you are looking for a really good variable dungeon crawl that you can play over and over and over, bringing different characters in every time, having these randomly generated dungeons, and it's a campaign, right? I mean, it's like an 8-level campaign. And the cool thing is, it's not a legacy game really, Dice Throne Adventures, but there are unlockables in it. So once you play it and beat it a couple times, you're going to be bringing even more variable stuff that you've unlocked into the game. Okay, let's talk about Santa versus Krampus specifically and this campaign. So you've got 3 designers on this game. First up is Gavin Brown, who essentially runs Roxley, and he's contributed design to some of their games. So that includes Brass Birmingham, Jab Real-Time Boxing, and Super Motherload. Then you've got the 2 designers who started out with this game before it was under Roxley's banner. So originally, it was kind of a passion project. You had designer Nate Chatelier and artist Manny Tremblay, who also did design work. So those are the 2 other designers. And they thought they were going to do this and it was going to be a smaller game. They produced it originally in 2018, I believe. It was just called Dice Throne. And then they collected everything into a season 1. Then Roxley got wind of it. They decided to publish it. So they did season 2, the Battle Chest, through Roxley. And then they came along and they redid Season 1. It was called Season 1 Battle Chest Rerolled. And they used the same upgrade and components and things like they had for the Season 2 Battle Chest. So they kind of redid Season 1 under the Roxley banner. Then they put out Dice Throne Adventures, which was the cooperative dungeon crawl game. And then they did Marvel. Now for the Marvel version, there weren't miniatures made. And I'm a little disappointed in that because it's really nice to have these pre-painted miniatures that are sculpted from Manny Tremblay's art. And I have them for the first 2 seasons. But they are not making them for the Marvel set. There are standees, so you can still use the Marvel characters in Dice Throne Adventures. I'm not sure if they're planning on doing miniature sets later. Maybe they're going to do a whole Marvel-themed Dice Throne Adventures. Or maybe there's some exclusivity rights that have to do with Marvel United or Crisis Protocol. So you could always use miniatures from those games if you wanted, or you could just use the standees in Marvel. For this new set, which is just 2 characters, Santa and Krampus, there are the pre-painted miniatures. Anyway, that's kind of the brief history. So it started with Nate Chatelier. So if we're looking at his credits, they include Dice Throne Season 1, and Dice Throne Season 2 Battle Chest. And then Manny Tremblay as a designer, his credits also include Dice Throne Season 1, and Dice Throne Season 2 Battle Chest. Manny Tremblay as an artist, his credits include Dice Throne Season 1, Dice Throne Season 2 Battle Chest, Radlands, and Wonderland's War. And then Roxley, as a publisher, their 5 highest rated games include Brass Birmingham, Brass Lancashire, Dice Throne Season 2 Battle Chest, Radlands, and Santorini. Now, in terms of the pledges that you can pledge through this campaign, there are 4 of them. For $35, you can get the Battle Box. That's going to include this new set with Santa and Krampus, as well as the promo set for Dice Throne Adventures. It's called Santa's Workshop. It's going to give you something that you can use in Dice Throne Adventures. If you'd like to increase your pledge and pledge the $59 pledge level, which is called the Gift Pack, that is going to add into that pledge the miniatures for Santa and Krampus. So if you're pledging at the cheaper $25 level, you're not getting the miniatures, but you'll get them here, as well as card sleeves for Santa and for Krampus. If you pledge at the $300 level, which is called the Gameplay Pack, you are going to add to your pledge Dice Throne Season 1 Rerolled, Dice Throne Season 2 Battle Chest, Dice Throne Adventures, all 3 promo packs, 1 for each of those, and finally a Season 2 leaflet patch kit. If you want to get even more stuff, you're going to pledge at the $600 level. That's called the whole sleigh. That's going to include sleeves for everything. So for Dice Throne Adventures, for both of the battle chests, for the new Santa and Krampus pack, just as many sleeves as you need. It's also going to include 3 different dice trays, 5 different neoprene mats. They're kind of formatted for different versions of the game. There's one for Dice Throne Adventures, there's one for Season 1, one for Season 2. I think the thing to be aware of with these mats, though, is they're not really specific to the game. Like, they're not labeled with things that you would use in the game. They're just mats that you can use to play on. And they have the art from the game. So they're not gameplay essential. They're not even gameplay essential in terms of, upgrading your board, because there is no board to a mat. They're just nice surfaces to be playing on. So you'll get 5 mats as well as 3 dice trays with this pledge. And then you'll also get all the minis in the game. So you'll get the mini set that came with Season 1 Battle Chest Rerolled. You'll get the mini set that came with the Season 2 Battle Chest. And of course, you'll be getting these Santa and Krampus minis as well. Now, if you want some of the things, but not all of the things, there are add-ons for you to pick and choose from. For $11, you can get the sleeves that you'll need just for this pack, Santa and Krampus. So, I don't know, maybe you're just pledging the $25 battle box and you don't want to upgrade to that $59 pledge because you don't want the minis, but you still want the sleeves. This will give you the sleeves. For $10, you can add on Flaming Die sleeves. These are really for Dice Throne Adventures. That's the flaming die is the icon, the symbol for Dice Throne Adventures. So you'll get 100 sleeves per pack, and these are designed to be used with Dice Throne Adventures. For $15, you can also add on the Santa's Workshop promo pack that goes along with Dice Throne Adventures. You're going to be getting that automatically with any pledge level here. It comes with the battle box. Maybe you need a second copy of that. So you can add it on for 15 bucks. You can also add on for $15 the Santa and Krampus, the two pre-painted miniatures. For 20 bucks, you can add on a neoprene playmat. It's got Santa and Krampus art. It's not really specific to the game like I was saying before when I was talking about the individual pledge levels, but if you just want a neoprene mat with Santa and Krampus art on it to be rolling your dice on and stuff, 20 bucks. For $20, you can add on a velvet dice tray. Now, if you're doing the really expensive pledge, the $600 one, you're getting 3 dice trays in that pledge. One of them is this velvet dice tray. And then there are 2 other kind of regular dice trays that were, I think, offered for Dice Throne previously. But the velvet dice tray, this new one, is sturdier, and of course it's got velvet on it, but it's better made. It's sturdier than the normal kind of folded together dice trays. So if you want one of these, because you're not getting the $600 pledge, you can add that on for $20. Finally, you can add on metal dice sets if you want. One is for Santa, one is for Krampus. They're $25 each. So 25 bucks Santa metal dice, 25 bucks Krampus metal dice. In the continental US, there are 3 different estimates for shipping: $8, $15, and $25. $8 is for either the battle box or the gift pack. $15 is for the $300 pledge, and $25 is the shipping for the big $600 pledge. And finally, Roxley is planning on delivering this new package of Dice Throne goodness in December of 2022. The second campaign we're going to be looking at in this video is for a game called Drop Bears. It had a minimum required funding goal of about $58,000. They're currently at about $92,000, which is about 1.5 times that minimum required funding goal. Now, Drop Bears is going to complete its funding on Tuesday, July the 19th. The game is designed for 1 to 4 players, plays in about 30 to 60 minutes. Complexity on the game is medium light, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium high. The designer and artist, it's also his publishing company, he's only really put out one game before, but it's a game that I was very impressed with. It's called The Ratcatcher, a solo adventure game. And I think for my money, it might be the best solo game out there. It is a really, really cool game. You're catching rats. It's kind of steampunk themed. The art is amazing. This artist is great. He designs so well, and he's such a good artist. I really like The Ratcatcher. I think if there was justice in the world, that would be the game that was getting all the hype that Final Girl is getting. It's, in my opinion, it's a much better solo game. And a lot of solo games are just this kind of mishmash of resource management, and the decisions never feel that compelling to me in them. The Ratcatcher has that somewhat, but it's got so much kind of variability between what's happening. I think it mixes things up enough that it keeps it fresh and it gives you compelling decisions. It doesn't just feel like you're pushing resources around and trying to solve a resource puzzle. There's a bit of that in the Ratcatcher, but there's a lot more than that going on. And I'm just a huge fan of the Ratcatcher. I've played it digitally. I missed the campaign the first time around. I'm pretty sure that you're going to be able to add on that game in the Pledge Manager. And if I backdrop Bears, which I think you'll find out next week if I did, if I do, I'm probably going to be trying to add on the Ratcatcher as well. And you may want to do that too. But this game works with some similar mechanics, largely action points. Thematically, though, instead of this being a steampunk themed game where you're running around in the sewers and trying to catch and kill all the rats, this is a game that takes place in Australia where a bunch of tourists who are not very aware or experienced have landed, and there are these are mythical drop bears. They don't really exist. But there's this kind of urban legend that these drop bears exist, which are kind of evil, crazy, cannibalistic koalas that drop down from the trees and attack people. So that is the kind of urban legend that the designer and artist Matthew Aslan has taken and twisted into his latest theme. But it functions in some ways similarly to the Ratcatcher. It's largely based on action points. However, the Ratcatcher was purely a solo game. Drop Bears can be played solo, but it's also designed as a multiplayer game, which is pretty cool. I'm really looking forward to trying out Drop Bears, and maybe I'll be backing it to do that. We'll see. So the game is designed by Matthew Aslin. He previously designed the Ratcatcher, the solo adventure game. As an artist, he's also worked on the Ratcatcher, the solo adventure game. And then his publishing company, Platypus Industries, is publishing his games, so they have also previously published the Ratcatcher, the solo adventure game. For $54, you can pledge Core Set. That's going to give you the core version of the game with any unlocked stretch goals. For $105, you can pledge Survival Expert. That's going to add on 2 expansions, the Old Bruce expansion and the Ancient Una expansion. Old Bruce is a giant crazy koala, and Ancient Una is a platypus. But these are essentially kind of bosses. So when you get these expansions, you're going to be getting bigger miniatures and the stuff that goes along with these additional bosses. For $141, you can pledge at the Clamper pledge level. That's going to throw in some additional items, a game mat, a dice tray, a wooden token set, and then the components of the print and play. Now, there is a print and play level that you can pledge at, but I don't typically cover pledges that give you anything that's not physical. So I don't include print and play pledge levels. I also tend to not cover campaigns that are only print and play. So I'm kind of focusing more on physical components and physical games. If you want to piecemeal some of these components together and not pledge at the highest level, then for $33, you can add on the Old Bruce expansion. For $24, you can add on the Ancient Una expansion. For $10, you can add on the dice tray. For $15, you can add on the wooden token upgrade set. For $20, you can add on the game mat. And for $7, you can add on the Curious Tour Rat. It's like a tourist, but it's a rat, so it's a tour rat. And this is something to be used with the Ratcatcher. It's like an additional boss to be used in the Ratcatcher. Now, if you pledged the Ratcatcher previously, if you were one of the people who pledged that game when that was on Kickstarter, you will get this add-on for free. But if, like me, you didn't, and you still want it, then you're going to need to add it on for $7. Shipping in the continental US is being estimated at $18, and Platypus Industries is planning on delivering Drop Bears in April of 2023. For the third campaign today, we're headed over to Gamefound, and that is for Summit, Sanity plus Big Box. Now, they had a minimum required funding goal of $15,000 for this one. They're currently at $96,000, which is about 6.5 times that minimum required funding goal. This one is also going to complete its funding on Tuesday, July the 19th. Summit is a game for 1 to 6 players that plays in 30 to 150 minutes. Complexity on the game is medium light, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium low. The publisher for this one, Inside Up Games, has produced a lot of campaigns, and I think they're at the point now where we can downgrade them from medium high to medium low. Happy about that. They produce a lot of pretty good stuff. The game is essentially a race game. Players are hiking up a mountain and they're racing to get there. One of the really cool things about the game, though, is that there's a karma mechanic. So you can do things where you help out your players that you're playing against, and you'll both get benefits from it. You'll both get benefits because you're incentivized to help other players. So even though you're competing against other players, at least when you can play it in the competitive version, you can also play it cooperatively. But even when you're playing competitively, you're still going to be incentivized to help each other, which I think is really, really cool. Now, they have a couple expansions for this one that have been made previously. There is a Yeti expansion, so if you add that on, you're going to have a Yeti traveling around the mountains trying to attack you. And there's also a Teams expansion. So what that is, because you can already play the game competitively or cooperatively, Teams allows you to team up with other players and play in pairs. So you'll be playing 2 versus 2 or 2 versus 2 versus 2. Now, the new expansion, Sanity, adds on new mechanics. So as you're racing up this mountain and dealing with your ability to physically survive, you're also going to have new mechanics that deal with the mental level of it. mental anguish and mentally being able to deal with all the challenges that you're coming across. It feels to me a little bit like the Cthulhu games, where you have both a physical and a mental level. So if you're playing with Summit and you add on, this new Sanity expansion, you're going to be dealing with mental challenges as well as physical challenges. Now, the game is designed by Connor McGooey, who previously has worked on games like Seven Souls, Gorus Maximus, and the original Summit, the board game. Jordan Danielson is the artist. They've previously worked on the original Summit, the board game. And the publisher here, Inside Up Games. Their 3 most successful games, according to BGG, are Earth, Gorus Maximus, and the original Summit, the board game. In terms of the specific pledges that you can do in this campaign, for $25, you can pledge the Sanity expansion, and that's just going to get you the new expansion. For $99, you can pledge Sanity plus Big Box. That's going to get you the Sanity expansion plus the Big Box that you can hold everything in. However, it will not include the base game. So that is for people who already own a copy of the base game and are looking for a storage solution. For $185, you can pledge the all-in, and that is going to give you, of course, the Big Box, the Sanity expansion, but it's also going to include a copy of the base game and the 2 previous expansions, Teams and Yeti. There's also some add-ons that you can add on to your pledge. For $15, you can add on sleeves for the Summit expansion. That's going to be 120 sleeves. And for $35, you can add on a pack of sleeves that will sleeve all of the cards in the game. So that's if you have everything. And that includes 400 sleeves, $35. You can add on the Yeti expansion for $15. $20 will add on the Teams expansion. An additional copy of Summit, the board game, can be added on for $60. And if you'd like a French translation, that's $5. Shipping in the continental US has been estimated at $9, $20, and $35. So if you're just getting the Sanity expansion, it's $9. The Sanity expansion with the Big Box is $20. And if you're doing the all-in, that's $35 in estimated shipping. And finally, Inside Up Games is planning on delivering this campaign in April of 2023. For the final campaign, we're going back to Kickstarter. That's for the Grand Carnival expansion and reprint. This had a minimum required funding goal of $18,500. It's currently at $62,000, which is about 3.5 times that minimum required funding goal. The Grand Carnival is going to complete its funding on Thursday, July the 21st. This is a game for 1 to 4 players. It plays in about 45 to 60 minutes. Complexity on the game is medium light, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium high. Now, the Grand Carnival is a tile placement game. It takes place at a carnival. You're trying to build attractions, and you're also trying to leave spaces, kind of pathways, for people to walk through the carnival and experience it. And then you're going to be dinged for areas where you don't build anything. So it is a lighter tile placement game. It's themed around a carnival. This new expansion is going to give you things like clowns, enormous attractions, and golden tickets, which I think are designed to be a little bit of a shout out to Willy Wonka. Now, the game is designed by Rob Kramer, who designed the original base game, The Grand Carnival, as well as a game called Turbo Drift. The art is by Ryan Goldsberry, who's worked on Burgle Bros, Fugitive, and Paperback. And the publisher, Uproarious Games, has published Getaway Driver, Grand Carnival, and World Domination. So not too many really well-known games. The Grand Carnival is probably their biggest hit to date. Now, for $18, you can pledge Bumper Cars. That's going to get you the new On the Road expansion, which has a bunch of smaller modules that you can add into the base game. So you can add one, you can add in several, and they're themed around different things. I think I mentioned like clowns, golden tickets, enormous attractions, stuff like that. But there's going to be a bunch of smaller modular expansions that you can add into the base game. For $24, you can pledge at the Ferris wheel pledge level. That's going to include the expansion and also an upgrade kit. So this pledge level is for people who already have the base game. Even though Z Garcia has called this, I think it's like his favorite game of 2021 or 2022, he highlighted that there were some problems with the components of the game. Namely, that the meeples used in the game were not that well made, and they had a lot of little pieces that stuck out from the meeple more than most, and those pieces were very prone to breaking off. So the upgrade kit is going to give you new sets of meeples that are redesigned to not break so easily, as well as new tiles with upgraded art. So if you have the previous version of the game, you may want to get this and get the upgrade kit. If you're getting a later pledge level, the two that we're about to talk about, they already have the upgrades in them. So you won't need to get an upgrade kit. You'll be getting a newer version of the base game that already has upgraded components. So the first of those is for $42. It's called Swing Ride, and that is literally just the new base game with the upgraded components. For $60, you can pledge Roller Coaster, and that's going to give you the new version of the base game with the upgraded components and the new expansion. Finally, US shipping is being estimated at $3, $6, $8, and $12. So $3 for the new expansion, $6 for the expansion and the upgrade kit, $8 for the base game, if you're getting this new edition of the base game, and $12 if you're doing the all-in. And then finally, Uproarious Games is planning on delivering the new Grand Carnival expansion and the reprint in April of 2023, which is a common month. Everything that I've profiled this week is delivering in April of 2023, except for the Dice Throne, which is December of 2022. But Drop Bears, the Summit Sanity expansion in Big Box, and now the Grand Carnival expansion and the reprint, all delivering in April of 2023. So that brings us to the end of the video. 4 campaigns that I'm really excited about. I would like to back them all. I have too many games. I'm not going to back them all. I need to make some choices. I think it's likely that I will end up backing 3 out of these 4. I think I'm only going to be able to cut 1. So tune in next week for another Kickstarter Weekly. You'll find out what I actually did back. I'll also be talking about Struggle of Empires, the Deluxe Edition, Kalis, and maybe some lighter games. And then, who knows, maybe I'll have something that's arrived next week as well. Until then, have a great week yourself. Play lots of great games. Be excellent to each other. Don't forget to like and subscribe. That's very helpful to me right now as I continue to grow the channel. And I will see you all very soon in another week with a new video highlighting more cool campaigns, the best of the best in my opinion. And we can figure out what's out there that we want to back and what's worth our money and our shelf space. So take care, and I'll see you all very, very soon.